What makes Dexter the series interesting? Well, I guess that all can be tied back to the original novel by Jeff Lindsay, where he's the one that came up with this concept. But just the idea of a good guy serial killer is something that has a lot of uniqueness to it, right? This person who is doing something that is bad, but because of who they're doing it to, we as the audience or the reader or the viewer can be more understanding of them. And by virtue of, again, doing something that's against the law, there's also like a sort of superhero type, quality to it. And this is something that, the second season's Dark Defender episode even points out, right? The idea of the secret identity. And when you tie in that he's, working for a police station while doing something illegal, there's even more suspense and drama added on top of there of, whether or not his coworkers or the people that are closest to him, like his sister, are going to find out what he is. I also would say Dexter has a very strong supporting cast. I really like Deb. I know she can be very contentious with among fans. I think she has a very unique personality to such an extent that I would argue if you were to write down a lot of her dialogue just on a paper, like just writing a Dexter script and not putting her name, you would still know who it was because she has such a unique way of speaking and reacting to things. And I like the other ones like Masuka and Batista as well. But I guess again for me, I liked. So I went into the show with the understanding, when told by some fans, "Hey, stop watching this after season 4. It gets not good," and I can be very forgiving to season 5. I can be very forgiving to season 7 as well. But I really find it interesting. Like the fan discourse is so fascinating to me because I've realized over the past few years that there are two factions of fans: the ones who want it to end for the sake of telling a good story, and the other ones who basically want it to be a more gritty version of The Simpsons. I remember reading during one of the Resurrection trailer previews, when they post a trailer before the episode comes out, somebody writing that they wanted Resurrection to have 10 seasons, and I just couldn't help but find myself cringing. I have seen people who are very critical of season 3. They rank it low, they talk trash about it. And I have to say this: what I like so much about the first half of the show, and again, there are pieces of the later half as well that I enjoy, but what I really liked about that first half was that there was a true sense of something different every season, right? Season 1, you have this main antagonist that they're trying to figure out who it is. Season 2, he's under threat, and basically we're having the revelations about what happened with his father, which is still adding more lore on top of the mythos of the character. Season 3, he's got a friend or a buddy that's like working under him, but then you have the differences of like what happens when someone that knows what he is and he's training to be like him strays from the path. Season 4, right, the attempt at having like a role model serial killer. And the issue with Dexter, which is something you could say of a lot of different series, is that when you have a premise that's really interesting, there's always a tendency for that original idea to get screwed over by virtue of things that are monetary versus narrative focused. So I believe Dexter, the show, should have been at a maximum 7 seasons. I think after we get to season 4's conclusion, right, the big, huge, shocking twist of Rita's death, that there would be this gradual unraveling. Because I really felt like to do something that major, the show needs to go in a completely different direction, right? You have this budding romance that blossoms into a marriage and a child. That Dexter was thinking he could have it all, be a secret murderer and then also someone who has a family life, and it just came crashing down quicker than he could have ever imagined. And if those last 3 seasons had been season 5, he's getting sloppier. Season 6, he's found out. Season 7, manhunt, and then the capture. I think Dexter would be known as one of the greatest shows ever. And it's so frustrating because, again, people will trash the 3rd season, but one thing season 3 had over the ones that came after 4 was a unique premise that moved the show forward. The elevation of Dexter and Rita's romance, and again, that unique thing of him having a sidekick slash accomplice. And once you get to these later seasons of the show, right? And again, I'm generally kind or inclined to say that season 5 and 7 are okay. But once you get to these later seasons, this back half of the show, season 5, you have him with an accomplice again, except now there's a romance twist to it. Season 6, another plot twist, but this one, uh, people can see coming a mile away, right? The whole secretive, oh, is it two killers or is it one? And this weird hyper fixation on religion. And then with season 7, again, I'm kind to it. I like where they were going with the plot. I really just feel like it was insane that they dropped that for we got in season 8, which I think is much worse. But it's frustrating because Dexter has so many aspects of it that I enjoy, right? Good music, great performances. Um, and when you see it not able to capitalize on what was laid there, it just it's just frustrating. It really is. The things I tend to be most disappointed by are the ones that start off shows or movies, whatever. Narratives that start off interesting and then they just slowly decay. Like because you see at one point they were able to appeal to you, right? And then as time passes or as you get further into it, you're like, is this really where it's going? And I feel like if Showtime wasn't such a greedy, money-hungry company, Dexter probably would have been 6 or 7 seasons, much certainly shorter than it ended up being, and we could have gotten a finale that was definitive, that wasn't so hated, and a lot of these continuations, which I have mixed feelings about as well, wouldn't have to exist because we would have already had a conclusion that people were content with. But when greed comes before a desire to tell a good story, this is what happens. You get these series that don't conclude, or if they do conclude, they get trotted back out a few years later. And that's why for a big portion of time I didn't watch New Blood. I didn't watch it until Resurrection was announced. But it's like I feel so bad for New Blood because it was a show that had to do the impossible. It had to be set in a completely different area with none of the cast except for Dexter and Batista in 2 episodes from that original show present. And of course, you get the Ghost Deb or whatever. But it's like, whatever. Most of the cast gone. But you have to somehow be a definitive, satisfying finale to the previous 8 seasons. And I just didn't think it could work. And I find the discourse around Dexter really interesting, too, because you can find fans who like season 3, can't stand season 3, like season 5, can't stand season 5. There seems to be only really solid consensus on 6 and 8 just being utter trash. It's very rare for me to see someone who likes either of those. And I tend to watch a lot of Dexter essay and analysis videos because as someone who wants to write, even if Dexter concluded 5, well, obviously it's still going on Resurrection, but if the original show ended over 10 years ago, I still like to watch people talk about it because they might say something I hadn't thought of before. They might make a point I didn't really consider. And again, there's so many varied opinions on it to where I feel there's a real value in hearing out what someone else might have to say. So I guess that's why it's interesting to me. It's got a really unique premise. The first half of it, I think, was building towards something. The second half was just kind of stalling because Showtime was making too much money. Some nice performances, very solid A+ performance from the lead actors of Michael C. Hall and Jennifer Carpenter, and really just a good example of how a good premise, right, a good idea, a brilliant idea for a story, can be hurt by execution that is not intending to give that idea a good conclusion.